Bandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishikam Vitam Sya Om Agyana Timaranda Shagyanarjana Shalakya Shakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurava Bhistam Supurakam Garaganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanagam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Bharatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwa Gurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Prem Nawe Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanam Suchanda Vananam Balarka Chelan Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Varam Bandetam Shubharam Marika Sharanam Yashishwara Shridaram Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavenebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Nama Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaurata Vishe Namah. We're hearing from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is Antya-lila, chapter 6. Lord Chaitanya meets Raghunath das Goswami. And this is text number 266. Varshantaresh Shivananda Chale Nila Chale Raghunathara Sevak Vipra Tara Sangichale. The next year, when Shivananda Sen was going to Jagannath Puri as usual, the servants and the Brahmin, who was a cook, went with him. So, when Raghunath das Goswami's parents heard that Raghunath was in Jagannath Puri and he was very renounced, and then they were unhappy, so they wanted to send some money and 2 servants and a cook to attend to Raghunath Das. But at that time, Shivananda Sen had just returned from Jagannath Puri and said, they can't go by themselves, so I'll take them with me next year when I go. So the next year, Shivananda Sen, when Shivananda Sen was going to Jagannath Puri, as usual, the servants and the Brahmin, who was a cook, went with him. And they also brought money from his father, Raghunath Das's father. Sebipra Britya Chari Shatamudra Loya Nilachale Raghunathe Milila Asya. The servants and Brahmin brought 400 coins to Jagannath Puri, and there they met Raghunath Das. He said 400 gold coins. Raghunath Das Angikara Nakorila Drabyaloya Duijana Tahairahila. Raghunath Das did not accept the money and men sent by his father. Therefore the Brahmin and one of the servants stayed there with the money. So servant and the Brahmin stayed with the money. Raghunath didn't accept it, so they just stayed in Jagannath Puri. Tabe Raghunatha Kori Aneka Jatan Mashe Duidina Koila Prabhurni Mantran. At that time, Raghunath Das began inviting Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his house with great attention for 2 days every month. Duini Mantrane Lage Kodi Ashtapan Brahmana Brityatai Korana Etika Grahan. The cost for these two occasions was 640 kodis. Therefore, he would take that much from the servant and the Brahmin. Now it says, at that time Raghunath Das began inviting Mahaprabhu to his house with great attention. But as far as I remember, Raghunath is under the care of Swarup Damodar, and Swarup Damodar stays in I thought that he was in the Gambhir with Mahaprabhu, but anyway, so that time Raghunath Das began inviting Mahaprabhu to his house with great attention for 2 days every month. Duini mantrane lage kore ashtapan brahmana brityatai korana etika grahan. The cost for these 2 occasions was 640 kodis, therefore he would take that much from the servant and the Brahmin. So, Emata nimantrana varsha dui koila pache Raghunatha nimantrana chari-dadhi-mahotsava. Raghunath Das continued to invite Mahaprabhu in this way for 2 years, but at the end of the 2nd year he stopped. Masha dui jabe Raghunatha nakore nimantran srarupe puchila tabe satchiranandan. When Raghunath Das neglected to invite Mahaprabhu for 2 consecutive months, the Lord, the son of Sachi, questioned Swarup Damodar. Raghu kene amai nimantrana chari-dadhi-mahotsava Swarup kohe manikechu bichara korila. The Lord asked, why has Raghunath Das stopped inviting me? Swarup Damodar replied, he must have reconsidered something in his mind. Vishayara dravyaloya kori nimantran prasanana hoy iha jane prabhurman. I invite Mahaprabhu by accepting goods from materialistic people. I know that the Lord's mind is not satisfied by this. Mora chitta dravya loite na hoy nirmo enimantrani deki pratishta matrafal. My consciousness is impure because I accept all these goods from people who are interested only in pounds, shillings, and pence. Therefore, by this kind of invitation, I get only some material reputation. Now, this pound, shilling, and pence is a term from England meaning money, but of course, that's not the monetary denominations, we would say, of India. But what it means is my consciousness is impure because I accept all these goods from people who are interested only in money. Therefore, by this kind of invitation, I get only some material reputation. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks that people who are under the bodily conception of life are called materialists. If we accept the offerings of such people, place them before the Lord, and invite Vaishnavas to partake of the prasadam, that attempt will gain us only a material reputation, not the actual benefit of service to a pure Vaishnava. One should therefore try to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but by fully surrendering at His lotus feet. If one engages for the service of the Lord, whatever money one has honestly earned, that is spiritual service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master, and the Vaishnavas. So I remember a few weeks ago I asked Srila Chaitanya, because we used to collect potatoes for the Gaur Purnima festival, and one place we used to collect was in memory, and I asked Acharya Maharaj about that, and he said, no, I don't so much go there anymore. Those persons are very, he said, materialistic, so I don't like to go there. So that's talking about accepting goods from persons who are only interested in money. Uparode Prabhu Mora Mane Nani Mantra Namanile Duke Hoibeka Murkajan. At my request, Mahaprabhu accepts the invitations because he knows that a foolish person like me would be unhappy if he did not accept them. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that people who are advanced in learning but attached to material enjoyment, who are puffed up by material possessions by birth in an elevated aristocratic family or by education, may offer Shobhata devotional service to the deity and also offer prasadam to Vaishnavas. Because of their ignorance, however, they cannot understand that since their minds are materially polluted, neither the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, nor the Vaishnavas accept their offerings. If one accepts money from such materialistic persons to offer food to the deity and Vaishnavas, a pure Vaishnava does not accept it. This causes unhappiness for the materialists because they are fully absorbed in the bodily conception of life. Therefore, they sometimes turn against the Vaishnavas. This Eta vicharya nimantrana chari-dadhi-mahotsava shunima prabhu hashe bolite lagila. Considering all these points, Swarup Damodar concluded, he has stopped inviting you. Hearing this, Mahaprabhu smiled and spoke as follows. Vishayerana kaile malina hoiman, malina mana hoile nahi krishnara smaran. When one eats food offered by a materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated. When the mind is contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur suggests that people who are materialistic inclined and sahajiyas, or so-called Vaishnavas, who eat everything very casually, or who take everything very casually, are both Vishayis or materialists. Eating food offered by them causes contamination, and as a result of such contamination, even a serious devotee becomes like a materialistic man. There are 6 kinds of associations: giving charity, accepting food, offering food, talking confidentially, and inquiring confidentially. One should very carefully avoid association or associating with both the sahajiyas, who are sometimes known as Vaishnavas, and the non-Vaishnavas or Avaishnavas. Their association changes the transcendental devotional service of Lord Krishna into sense gratification, and when sense gratification enters the mind of a devotee, he is contaminated. The materialistic person who aspires after sense gratification cannot properly think of Krishna. So here it mentions if one accepts food cooked by a materialist, it contaminates one's mind. So sometimes I remember I asked Govinda Maharaj, well, we travel, and in traveling, we have to eat food that's cooked by a materialist. And Govinda Maharaj said, but we're not accepting food from them, we're buying it. And it's different when you pay for it than when it's given to you. Meaning that was a transaction out of necessity, but not based on somebody taking food from a materialist. Anyway, when one eats food offered by a materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated. And when the mind is contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. Vishayar hoi. I remember when I was new in the mission, I was in India, and I would go out collecting all day. And being out collecting all day, I would get very hungry. And I remember perhaps one person with a small shop, he saw me and he called me over and he offered me lunch, just for free. And I would eat there. I would eat there each day while I was collecting. He would call me over and I would take lunch. And then one night, I had this dream. And in my dream, everything was red. Everything looked very red. And I didn't know what was happening in the dream. And I saw I was in a cafeteria, and I saw on where they had a window where you could see the food. Everything was kind of red colored, and then I saw on the a sign in the cafeteria in big letters that said, onions and garlic. So I knew when I woke up what my dream was referring to. So the next day I talked to that man and I asked him if he cooked with onions and garlic. And he didn't, because he didn't speak English so well, he didn't know what I was asking him. And I asked somebody, finally I got somebody to translate, and they asked him if he cooked with onions and garlic, and he was very happy and smiled, and he held up in each hand bunches of onions and garlic. After that, I stopped going to his shop. So when one eats food offered by a materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated. And when the mind is contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. Vishayer anahoy rajas animantra data bhokta duhara malina hoyman. When one accepts an invitation from a person contaminated by the materialistic mode of passion, the person who offers the food and the person who accepts it are both mentally contaminated. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that there are three varieties of invitation: those in the mode of goodness, those in passion, and those in ignorance. An invitation accepted from a pure devotee in the mode of goodness, an invitation accepted from a person who is pious but materially attached is in the mode of passion. An invitation accepted from a person who is materially very sinful is in the mode of ignorance. So then, after that, we go to not too far away, there was a Marwari restaurant where they sold thalis with like 2 vegetables, dal, rice, yogurt, and dessert for 3 rupees. I'd go there, and you could have seconds of everything except for chapatis and yogurt. I was like 25 in those days. I'd get back late in the afternoon or early evening. And sometimes there wasn't even any prasadam left. So, ihara sankochayami eta dina nila balohoila janiya apani charidila. Because of Raghunath Das's eagerness, I accepted his invitation. Mahaprabhu is saying, because of Raghunath Das's eagerness, I accepted his invitation for many days. It is very good that Raghunath Das, knowing this, has now automatically given up that practice, given up this practice. So Mahaprabhu didn't like that Raghunath Das would get money from the servant and the Brahmin would cook. They would invite Mahaprabhu for some meal. And Mahaprabhu, out of his affection for Raghunath Das, would accept a meal, but Mahaprabhu did that out of affection for Raghunath, and he was not happy doing so. So, right, let's see. So Raghunath Das had previously invited Mahaprabhu to take meals twice a month. And then Raghunath Das stopped, thinking that Mahaprabhu is accepting the meal out of affection for me, but he doesn't really like the idea that I'm getting money from these materialists in order to be able to pay for the meal. So Mahaprabhu was happy that Raghunath gave up that practice. of inviting him. Mahaprabhu was actually more pleased that Raghunath Das stopped inviting him. Kata dine Raghunatha Simadwara Chadila Jatre Jai Magiya Kaite Aramba Korila. After some days, Raghunath Das gave up standing near the Simadwar gate and instead began eating by begging alms from a booth for free distribution of food. So before, Raghunath would stand at the entrance to the Jagannath temple and he would beg from persons coming out of the temple, and in that way he'd be able to get something to eat. But then he stopped doing that, and he would just go to a free place where they distribute prasadam. Like I remember Nityahari, he would distribute prasadam to pilgrims during the time of month of Damodar when they were doing parikrama, especially on time of Govardhan Hill parikrama. He would set up a booth and distribute prasadam to the pilgrims. So Raghunath Das began accepting something to eat from a booth that was set up for free distribution of food. Govinda Pashadui Prabhu Puchana Swarupere Raghubika Lagi Chad Tara Kene Nahe Simadware. When Mahaprabhu heard this news from Govinda, he inquired from Swarup Damodar, why does Raghunath Das no longer stand at the Simadwar gate to beg alms? Why doesn't he beg alms by the door of the Jagannath temple? Swarup kohe Simadware duka anubhavya Chatremage Kai Madhyana Kaligiya. Swarup Damodar replied, Raghunath Das felt unhappy standing at the Simadwar. Therefore he is now going at midday to beg alms from the charity booth. Prabhu kohe balo koila chadila Simadware bikabriti veshara achar. Hearing this news, Mahaprabhu said, he has done very well by no longer standing at the Simadwar gate. Such begging of alms resembles the behavior of a prostitute. Tata I kimartam ayam agachati ayam dashyati anena datam ayam apara sameti ayam dashyati anena pina datam anya sameshyati nadashyati itiyadi. So Mahaprabhu says such begging of food resembles the behavior of a prostitute. Here is a person coming near. He will give me something. This person gave me something last night. Now another person is coming near. He may give me something. The person who just passed did not give me anything, but another person will come and he will give me something. Thus a person in the renounced order gives up his neutrality and depends on the charity of this person or that. Thinking in this way, he adopts the occupation of a prostitute. And this is very true. I noticed this when we're begging. We were going out doing Guru Bhikka, collecting to bring back donations to Srila Sridhar Maharaj or Srila Govinda Maharaj. That one gets to know that certain persons would give and other persons wouldn't give. So one starts ignoring the persons who don't give, and one goes to the persons who do give money. But in this way, one becomes dependent on persons who are, this person gave me, this person's coming near, he gave me last night, but he's not giving me, but this other person, I know, this person. Mahaprabhu says that kind of begging is that kind of begging leads to a mentality like a prostitute, dependent on clients. So it's not, Mahaprabhu preferred that Raghunath Das gave up that kind of begging and just would go to a charity booth where they were distributing, where they would distribute food to the pilgrims. Now those kind of places exist in holy places like Puri, Vrindavan or something. But of course they don't exist in the big cities. There are not so many places like that. Chhatrijai, Jatalabha, Udarabaran, Anyakata, Nahi Suke, Krishna Sankirtan. If one goes to the booth where free food is distributed and fills his belly with whatever he obtains, there is no chance of further unwanted talk, and one can very peacefully chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Eta Bodhitare Puna, Prasada Korila, Govardhanera, Shila, Gunjamala, Taridila. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again bestowed his mercy upon Raghunath Das by giving him a stone from Govardhan Hill and a garland of Gunjamala. Garland of Gunja. Gunja is a special plant. Looks like Gunjamala consists of what looks like beans. Some are red, some are white, and that's considered. Gunjamala represents Srimati Radharani, and Govardhan is, of course, Krishna. Sankaranana, Sankarananda, Saraswati, Vrindavana, Shankarananda, Saraswati, Vrindavana, Hoityaila, Tehose, Shila Gunja, Malaloya Gela. Previously, when Shankarananda Saraswati had returned from Vrindavan, he had brought the Govardhan Shila and the Gunjamala with him. Parshve Ganda Gunjamala Govardhan Shila Tuibastu Mahaprabhur Age Anidila. He presented Mahaprabhu with these two items, the garland of Gunjamala, and the stone from Govardhan Hill, Govardhan Shila. Duya Purva Bastupaya Prabhu Tushta Hoila Smaranara Kale Gale Pare Gunjamala. Upon receiving these two uncommon items, Mahaprabhu was extremely happy. While chanting, he would put the garland around his neck. Govardhana Shila Prabhu Ridaye Netredare Kabuna Shai Granaloy Kabu Se Shire Kore. The Lord would put the stone to his heart or sometimes to his eyes. Sometimes he would smell it with his nose and sometimes place it on his head. Netra Jale Se Shila Bija Nirantar Shila Reko Hena Prabhu Krishna Kolebar. The stone from Govardhan was always moist with tears from his eyes. Mahaprabhu would say, this stone is directly the body of Lord Krishna. E Mata Tina Vatsara Shila Mala Darila Tushtahoya Shila Mala Raghunath Adila. For 3 years he kept the stone, the Govardhan Shila, and the garland, the Gunjamala. Then greatly satisfied by the behavior of Raghunath Das, the Lord delivered both of them to him. Prabhu kohe e Shila Krishnara Vigraha Ihara Seva Kora Tumi Koraya Agraha. Mahaprabhu instructed Raghunath Das, this stone is the transcendental form of Lord Krishna. Worship the stone with great eagerness. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya that in the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Govardhan Shila, the stone from Govardhan Hill, is directly the form of Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. The Lord used the stone for 3 years, and then in the heart of Raghunath Das, the Lord awakened devotional service to the stone. The Lord then gave the Govardhan Shila to Raghunath Das, accepting him as one of his most confidential servants. However, some envious people conclude that because Raghunath Das had not taken birth in the family of a Brahmin, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not give him the right to worship the deity directly, but instead gave him a stone from Govardhan. This kind of thought is naraki, or hellish. As stated in the Padma Purana, Arche Vishnu Shiladir Gurushu Naramatir Vaishnave Jati Buddhi Yashyaba Naraki Saha. If one thinks that the worshipable Shalagram Shila is a mere stone, that the spiritual master is an ordinary human being, or that a pure Vaishnava preaching the bhakti cult all over the world is a member of a particular caste or material division of society, is considered a naraki, a candidate for a hellish life. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed that the Govardhan Shila, the stone taken from Govardhan, is non-different from the body of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he indirectly advised such foolish persons that one should not be envious of a Vaishnava who belongs to a different caste or sect. One should accept a Vaishnava as transcendental. In this way, one can be saved. Otherwise, one is surely awaiting a hellish life. Eshilara koratumi satvika pujan achirat pabe tumi Krishna premadan. But Mahaprabhu continued, worship this stone in the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continue. Worship this stone in the mode of goodness, like a perfect Brahman, for by such worship you will surely attain ecstatic love of Krishna without delay. Worship this stone in the mode of goodness, like a perfect Brahman, for by such worship you will surely attain ecstatic love of Krishna without delay. Ek kunja Jala ara tulasi manjari satvika seva shuddha bhabe kori. For such worship one needs a jug of water and a few flowers from a tulsi tree, some tulsi manjaris. This is worship in complete goodness when performed in complete purity. Duidike duipatra madhye komala manjari Emata ashta manjari dive shvarakori. With faith and love, you should offer 8 soft tulsi flowers, each with 2 tulsi leaves, one on each side of each flower. Shri haste shila diya Antya-lila anande Raghunatha Seva korite lagila. After thus advising him how Shri Haste Shila Diya Antya-lila Anande Raghunatha Seva Korite Lagila. After thus advising him how to worship, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally offered Raghunath das the Govardhan Shila with his transcendental hand. As advised by the Lord, Raghunath das worshipped the Shila in great transcendental jubilation. Ek bitasti dui vastra Pinda ekani Swarup Dilena kunja anibaripani. Swarup Damodar gave Raghunath das 2 cloths, each about 6 inches long, a wooden platform, and a jug in which to keep water. E mata Raghunatha korana pujan pujakale deke shilai Brajendra Nandan. Thus Raghunath das began worshipping the stone from Govardhan, and as he worshipped, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, directly in the stone. Prabhuras Swahasta Datta Govardhan Shila Echinti Raghunatha Preme Bhashigela. Think of how he had received the Govardhan Shila directly from the hands of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Raghunath das was always overflooded with ecstatic love. Jala tulasir sevai tara jatas sukadoi shoda sho pachara pujai tata sukanoi. The amount of transcendental bliss that Raghunath das enjoyed simply by offering water and tulsi is impossible to achieve, even if one worships the deity with 16 kinds of paraphernalia. Emata kata dina korana pujan tabe swarup gosai tare kohila bachana. After Raghunath Das had thus worshipped the Govardhan Shila for some time, Swarup Damodar one day spoke to him as follows. Ashta kodera kaja sandesha kora samarpan shrada kore dile se amriterasam. Offer the Govardhan Shila 8 kodis worth of first-class sweetmeats known as kaja and sandesh. If you offer them with faith and love, they will be just like nectar. Tabeashta kodera kaja kore samarpan Swarupa Gyaya Govinda Taha Kore Samadan. Raghunath Das then began offering the costly sweetmeats known as kaja, which Govinda, following the order of Swarup Damodar, would supply. Raghunatha say Shila Mala Jabe Paila Gosaira Abhipray E Bhavana Korila. When Raghunath Das received from Mahaprabhu the Govardhan Shila and the Gunja Mala, he could understand the Lord's intention. Thus he thought as follows. Shila Diya Gosai Samarpila Govardhane Gunja Mala Diya Dila Radhika Charane. By offering me the Govardhan Shila, Mahaprabhu has offered me a place near Govardhan Hill. And by offering me the Gunja Mala, he has offered me shelter at the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. Anande Raghunather Bhaya Vishmaran Kayamane Sevilena Goranga Charan. Raghunath Das's transcendental bliss was boundless. Forgetting everything external, he served the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his body and mind. Ananta Guna Raghunather Ke Koribe Leka Raghunather Niyama Jaina Pasanera Reka. Ananta Guna Raghunather Ke Koribe Leka Raghunather Niyama Jaina Pasanera Reka. Who could list the unlimited transcendental attributes of Raghunath Das? His strict regulative principles were exactly like lines on a stone. The words Pashanera Reka are very significant. Raghunath Das Goswami followed the regulative principles so strictly and rigidly that they were compared to the lines on a stone. As such lines cannot be erased at any time, so the regulative principles observed by Sri Raghunath Das Goswami could not be changed under any circumstances. He was very strong in his vows. Sade Satab Prahar Jai Kirtana Smarane Ahara Nidra Chari Danda Seho Nahi Kondine. Raghunath Das spent more than 22 hours out of every 24 chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and remembering the lotus feet of the Lord. He ate and slept for less than an hour and a half, and on some days that also was impossible. So some days he wouldn't eat or sleep also. He was chanting the holy names and worshiping 22 hours a day. And then he would sleep and eat for less than an hour and a half. And on some days that was not possible. Vairagyara katatara adbhuta katan ajanmana dila jivai rasara sparshan. Topics concerning his renunciation are wonderful. Throughout his life, he never allowed his tongue sense gratification. Chindakani Kanta Binana Pare Vasana Savadane Prabhur Koila Agyara Palana. He never touched anything to wear except a small torn cloth and a patchwork wrapper. Thus he very rigidly executed the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The principle of very rigidly carrying out the order of the spiritual master must be observed. The spiritual master gives different orders to different people. For example, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Jiva Goswami, Raghunath das, Thus, the spiritual master, the principle of very rigidly carrying out the order of the spiritual master must be observed. The spiritual master gives different orders to different people. For example, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami to preach. And he ordered Raghunath das Goswami to strictly follow the rules and regulations of the renounced order. All 6 Goswamis strictly followed the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is the principle for progress in devotional service. After receiving an order from the spiritual master, one must strictly try to execute the order. That is the way of success. Pranaraka lage jeba korana bakan tahakana apanake kohe nirbeda bachan. Whatever he ate was only to keep his body and soul together. And when he ate, he would reproach himself thus. Atmanam shed vijaniyat param jnana dudashaya kemichan Kashava hetur deham pushnati lambata. If one's heart has been cleansed by perfect knowledge and one has understood Krishna, the Supreme Brahman, he then gains everything. Why should such a person act like a debauchee by trying to maintain his material body very carefully? This verse was spoken by Narada to Yudhishthira Maharaj regarding a householder's liberation from material bondage. On the spiritual platform, one does not unnecessarily care for the body. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has said, Deha smriti nahi jai samsara bandhana kahantara. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has said, Deha smriti nahi jar samsara bandhana kahantar. One who is spiritually situated does not think that he is the body. Therefore, he can transcendentally execute severe penances in the renounced order of life. The best example of such renunciation is Raghunath das Goswami. Prasadana basarira jata navikai duetin dina koile bata sadijai. Lord Jagannath's prasadam is sold by shopkeepers, and that which is not sold decomposes after 2 to 3 days. Simadvare gaba age se bata dare sadagande tailangi gai kaite na pare. All the decomposed food is thrown before the cows from Tailanga at the Simadwara gate because of its rotten odor. Even the cows cannot eat it. So that sometimes the food is so rotten that even the cows won't eat it because of the odor. Say Bata Raghunath Ratri Garayani Bata Pakalia Fele Gare Dia Mahupani. At night, Raghunath Das would collect that decomposed rice, bring it home, and wash it with ample water. Bitarer Drida J Maji Batapai Labana Dia Raghunatha Se Anakai. Thus he ate the hard inner portion of the rice with salt. So he would get the rotten rice and wash it and take off the outer part which was rotten, and he would eat the inner core part of the rice that was hard. Thus he ate the hard inner portion of the rice with salt. Bitarera Dridajay Maji Batapai Lavanya Diya Raguna Sayanakai. Thus he ate the hard inner portion of the rice with salt. Ek Din Swarup Taha Korite Dekila Hashia Tahara Kichu Magiya Kaila Ekadin Swarup Daha Korite Dekila Hashia Tahara Kichu Magiya Kaila. One day Swarup Damodar saw the activities of Raghunath Das. Thus he smiled and asked for a small portion of the food and ate it. Swarup Kohe Aichayamrita Kau Niti Amasabai Nahi Deho Ki Tomara Prakriti. Damodar, Swarup Damodar said, "You eat such nectar every day, but you never offer it to us. What is your character?" Govindera Muke Prabhu Sevarta Shunaila Govindera Muke Prabhu Sevarta Shunila Aradina She Prabhu Kohite Lagila. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard news of this from the mouth of Sri Govinda, he went there the next day and spoke as follows. So Raghunath was collecting decomposed prasadam of Lord Jagannath that was thrown out, and he was washing it and taking off the rotten outer portion and taking the inner portion dried with some salt, and he was eating that. Mostly the rice, like the rice. Washing off the rotten part of the rice and keeping the inner kernel. It was a little hard, and he would eat that with salt. And then Mahaprabhu, Govinda here. When Mahaprabhu heard of this news from the mouth of Govinda, he went there the next day and spoke as follows. Kahabastu kao sabe more na deha kene etaboli ek grasa korila bakane. What nice things are you eating? Why don't you give anything to me? Saying this, he forcibly took a morsel and began to eat from the decomposed rice. Anagrasa loite swarup hatete darila tavajogya nahi bole kadidnila. When Mahaprabhu was taking another morsel of food, Swarup Damodar caught him by the hand and said, "It is not fit for you." Thus he forcibly took the food away. Prabhu bole niti nana prasad kai aiche swara ara kon prasade nahi pai. Mahaprabhu said, "Of course, every day I eat varieties of prasadam, but I have never tasted such nice prasadam as that which Raghunath Das is eating." Emata Mahaprabhu nana lila kore Raghunath vairagya deki santoshan antare. Thus Mahaprabhu performed many pastimes at Jagannath Puri, seeing the severe penances performed by Raghunath Das in the renounced order. The Lord was greatly satisfied. Thus Mahaprabhu performed many pastimes at Jagannath Puri, and seeing the severe penances performed by Raghunath Das in the renounced order, the Lord was greatly satisfied. Apana udara Raghunath Das Goranga Stavakopa Brike Koriyache Prakash. In his poem known as the Gauranga Stavakopa Vriksha, Raghunath Das has described his personal deliverance. Mahasampad Davad api patitam udritya kripaya swarupeya sviye kujanam api mam nyasya mudita urogunja haram priyamapi cha govardhana shilam dadome gorango ridaya Udayan mam marayati mahasampad davad api patitam udritya kripaya sarupeya sviye kunjanamapi mam nyashyam mudita uragunja haram priyam apicha govardhan shila dado me gorango ridaya udayan mam marayati. Although I am a fallen soul, the lowest of men, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered me from the blazing forest fire of great material opulence by his mercy. He handed me over in great pleasure to Swarup Damodar, his personal associate. The Lord also gave me the Gunja Mala that he wore in his chest and a stone from Govardhan Hill, the Govardhan Shila, although they were very dear to him. That same Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, awakens within my heart and makes me mad after him. Eta kohilun Raghunath milan ihaje shuni pai Chaitanya Charan. Thus I have described the meeting of Raghunath Das with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone who hears about this incident attains the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Rupa Raghunath Pade Jaraash, Sri Rupa Raghunath Pade Jaraash, Chaitanya Charitamritam, Kohe Krishnadas, Sri Rupa Raghunath Pade Jarash, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kohe Krishnadas, praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya-lila, 6th chapter, describing Lord Chaitanya's meeting with Raghunath das Goswami. No son caracolas, son gunjamala. Dice la traducción caracola, pero no es. Son gunjamala. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama. Jaravaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama. Jaravaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama. Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan. Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. Jaoite Vignana Shabishta Puran. Jaoite Vignana Shabishta Puran. H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradas. H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradas. Tasabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras. Tasabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras. Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas. Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas. Janame Janame More Abhilash. Janame Janame More Abhilash. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Radha Krishna Nitya-lila Korila Prakash. Radha Krishna Nitya-lila Korila Prakash. Anande bolo Hare Bhaja Vrindavan. Anande bolo Hare Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyash. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyash. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narottam-das. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narottam-das. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyash. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyash. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narottam-das. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narottam-das. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Haribo. 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 Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridharishu Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Sananta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Sat Chidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupa Nuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Bhagavad Ki Jai. Narottam Srinivas Shyamananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vishvavaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ram Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Kuladvip Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda Ki Jai. Sokel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Sevashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan. Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.